The incense smoke curled lazily toward the rafters of the mahogany-clad room, smelling of sandalwood and something Leo couldn't quite place: old paper. Dried flowers. Either way, it was a hell of a lot better than the smell of antiseptic and bleach. In his previous life, Leo was the definition of a self-made man. He grew up in a drafty orphanage where the only thing offered in abundance was watery thin soup and the lesson that if you didn't fight for your seat at the table, you ate on the floor. He had clawed his way through night school, worked 3 jobs, and eventually built a tech empire that made him a billionaire by 35. He had the penthouse, the sleek black cars, and a wardrobe of Italian suits. But his 10-bedroom mansion was silent. The reality: women and men flocked to him, but their eyes always drifted to his wristwatch or the black card in his wallet. The loneliness: on his 38th birthday, he sat alone in a 5-star restaurant. He had ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, only to realize he had no one to clink glasses with. The end: a rainy night, a hydroplaning truck, and a screech of tires. As he lay in the hospital, listening to the steady beep, beep, of the heart monitor, he saw his distant cousins outside the glass door, already arguing about his will. What a waste, he had whispered, his last breath rattling in his chest. All that work, and no one to come home to. Leo opened his eyes. The ceiling wasn't the white acoustic tile of a hospital. It was made of dark, polished wood with intricate carvings of dragons. Young master, you're awake. Leo groaned, rubbing his head. Ah, my head feels like it was put through a blender. Can someone turn the lights down? The room went deathly silent. Leo blinked, his vision clearing. A young girl in a pale green hanfu, the kind you see in those high-budget historical dramas, was staring at him, her jaw literally hanging open. She dropped a brass basin, and the water splashed across the stone floor. Did the drama start already? Leo muttered, sitting up. He noticed his hands. They were pale, slender, and calloused in a way that suggested embroidery, not typing. Where's the director? And why am I wearing a dress? Wait, is this silk? It's high quality. You spoke, the girl whispered, trembling. The young master, the mute little lamb, he spoke. Who are you calling a lamb? Leo asked, his voice sounding different, higher, like a melody. He looked around. This wasn't a set. The dust motes dancing in the sunlight were real. The smell of the earth was real. He scrambled out of the bed, nearly tripping over a heavy, embroidered robe, and found a bronze mirror. The reflection that stared back was stunning. A youth of about 19, with skin like porcelain and wide, doe-like eyes that looked perpetually startled. I'm a teenager. Leo poked his cheek. And I'm pretty. Like boy band, pretty. As he sat on the edge of the bed, the girl, whose name was Su, began wailing with joy, calling for the doctors. Through her frantic babbling, Leo started to piece together his new reality. In this world, he was still Leo. But this Leo was an omega, a concept he only vaguely understood from a stray webnovel he'd read once, and he had been born mute. Oh, little master, Su sobbed, kneeling at his feet. Ever since the accident at the pond, we thought we'd lost you. You've been so scared of everyone your whole life. You used to just hide in the corner and shake whenever the guards walked by. Leo frowned. I was a scaredy cat. You were the gentlest soul in the empire. Su cried. So weak, so innocent, everyone bullied you because you couldn't find your voice. And then, the marriage happened. Leo's heart skipped a beat. Family. I'm married, he asked, his eyes brightening. I have a spouse. Someone who lives with me. Someone who cares. Su looked hesitant. Well, you are the consort. You were married off to the palace of the Northern Star. Your husband is the emperor. Leo leaned back, a huge, genuine grin spreading across his face. He didn't care about the politics or the emperor title. All he heard was husband. A partner. A home. The emperor, huh? Leo chuckled, feeling a rush of hope he hadn't felt in decades. Well, I guess I've moved up in the world. From an orphan to an empress, or consort, whatever. Is he nice? Does he like tea? Does he want kids? I've always wanted a dog, too. Just then, the heavy doors swung open. An elderly physician and 3 stern-looking guards marched in. The guards looked like they were expecting a fight, but when they saw Leo sitting there, swinging his legs and humming a tune, they froze. Heard the mute boy screamed, the lead guard grunted. Leo looked at him, crossed his arms, and raised an eyebrow. I didn't scream, I was making a point. Also, you're tracking mud on the floor. Su just cleaned that. The physician dropped his medical bag. The guards reached for their swords, then pulled back, looking terrified. He spoke. The physician gasped. The heavens have opened. The mute consort has been granted a tongue. It's a miracle. Su shouted. Leo rolled his eyes. It's not a miracle, it's just a conversation. Now, can someone bring me some solid food? And tell me more about this emperor husband of mine. When does he get home from work? I should probably look presentable if I'm going to meet my man for the first time. The physician and the guards exchanged a look of pure dread. He wants to meet the emperor. The guard whispered. The boy has lost his mind as well as gained his voice. Leo didn't notice their fear. He was too busy looking at his reflection and planning his new life. He was 19 again, he was apparently innocent and weak, though he planned to change that weak part very quickly, and most importantly, he wasn't alone. I have a husband, Leo thought, feeling a warmth in his chest. A real family. I don't care if he's the emperor or a peasant, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to be the best spouse this guy has ever seen. He didn't know yet that the emperor wasn't exactly what he expected. And he certainly didn't know that his one husband was actually three. The transition from a lonely billionaire to a mute little lamb in the imperial palace was proving to be a confusing, albeit luxurious, upgrade. Leo spent his first afternoon in his new 19-year-old body eating exotic fruits and ignoring the horrified whispers of the palace maids. So, Leo said, juice from a lychee staining his chin. My husband, the emperor. When does he usually drop by? Does he like flowers? Should I put on something translucent? Su nearly fainted. Young master, you cannot speak of the emperors so casually. And translucent. Oh, heavens, the trauma must have scrambled your soul. Emperors. Plural. Leo paused, a grape halfway to his mouth. Is that a title? Like the great and powerful Oz? No, master, Su whispered, checking the doors. The triple sovereigns. They rule as one. 3 alphas. 1 throne. And you are their only consort. Leo's eyes widened. 3. I get 3 husbands. Good lord, I hit the jackpot. In my last life, I couldn't even get a text back, and now I've got a whole boy band. The heavy vermilion doors of the fragrant lotus pavilion didn't just open, they practically exploded inward. The air in the room shifted instantly, growing heavy, pressurized, and smelling of cedar, cold rain, and old incense. The 3 men who walked in were tall, imposing, and draped in black and gold silks that screamed, I own everything you see. William, the first alpha, the eldest. His face was a mask of granite. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and eyes that looked like they had personally overseen 1,000 executions. He radiated a, don't talk to me unless you want to die, energy. Lucas, the second alpha, he looked like a lethal monk. His robes were buttoned to his very chin, and he held a string of prayer beads. His expression was one of profound annoyance, as if the very act of breathing was a breach of imperial protocol. He was the rule follower, who probably gave himself a demerit for sleeping 5 minutes late. Julian, the third alpha, the only one whose eyes weren't freezing. He looked at Leo with a mixture of profound longing and heartbreak. He stayed 3 paces behind the others, his hands twitching as if he wanted to reach out but was terrified the little lamb would shatter if he did. Usually, at this sight, the original Leo would have crawled under the bed, trembling and weeping silently. The alphas expected the usual, a pathetic, mute boy shaking in fear. Instead, they found Leo sitting cross-legged on the silk duvet, spitting a grape seed into a silver bowl. Oh, you guys are home, Leo chirped, hopping off the bed. Which one is which? You all look like you need a hug and a very long nap. The room went so silent you could hear a pin drop. William narrowed his eyes, his hand tightening on the hilt of his sword. It spoke. William's voice was like grinding stones. The physician said the mute had found his tongue, but I assumed it was a fever dream. It's not, it's Leo, Leo said, walking right up to William. He was a head shorter, but he didn't back down. He reached out and poked William's rock-hard chest. And you must be the grumpy one. William, right. You've got a real, Monday morning, vibe going on. Lucas stepped forward, his prayer beads clicking sharply. Consort. Stand back. Touch is prohibited without formal request. Section 4 of the Imperial Marital Code states. Oh, shut up with the manual, monk boy, Leo laughed, turning his gaze to Lucas. You're Lucas, I bet. You're very handsome, but you look like you haven't had a carb since the Ming Dynasty. Relax those shoulders. You'll get a cramp. Lucas recoiled as if Leo had tossed a snake at him. He is shameless. He is speaking back. Where is the punishment whip? Don't you dare, a soft voice intervened. Julian stepped forward, his eyes shimmering with tears. Leo, you can speak. Truly. Do you know who I am? Leo softened. This one was the kind one. He could feel the genuine love radiating off Julian. It was the thing he had craved his entire previous life. Julian, Leo said warmly. He took a bold step and grabbed Julian's hands. Julian flinched, expecting Leo to scream in terror as he always did. When Leo didn't let go, Julian's breath hitched. I know you love me, Leo said, giving his hand a cheeky squeeze. And honestly, I dig the patient, brooding type. But you gotta stop acting like I'm made of glass, Jules. I'm a big boy now. He called the third sovereign, Jules. Susu fainted in the corner. William stepped between Leo and Julian, his alpha aura flaring, a scent of burning wood that would usually send an Omega into a submissive fit. What game are you playing, little lamb? Yesterday you couldn't even look us in the eye. Today you are, flirting. Leo leaned in close to William, almost nose to nose, a playful smirk on his lips. Maybe I just realized that life is too short to be a mute wallflower. I've got 3 gorgeous husbands and a palace. Why should I be scared? Are you going to bite me, Will? Because honestly, that sounds like a fun Friday night. Lucas looked like he was having a stroke. Infraction. Gross indecency. He is an Omega behaving like a harlot. And you're an Alpha behaving like a math teacher, Leo shot back, winking at Lucas. We all have our flaws. Julian was the only one smiling, a small, bewildered grin. He isn't shaking, Julian whispered to his brothers. For the first time in 3 years, he isn't afraid of us. I'm not afraid, Leo said, walking back to the bed and lounging against the pillows in a way that was definitely not innocent. I'm hungry, I'm bored, and I've got a lot of lost time to make up for. So, which one of you is taking me to dinner first? Or do we do everything as a group? William's jaw dropped. Lucas turned bright red and stared at the ceiling. Julian simply laughed, a sound like silver bells. I think, Julian said, looking at his stunned brothers, that our little lamb has grown some very sharp teeth. Leo blew a kiss at the 3 of them. And I bite, too. Better get used to it, boys. The morning after the Great Awakening, the Imperial Palace was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. The mute little lamb wasn't just talking, he was talking back. Leo, however, was busy. He had decided that his new life as a 19-year-old Omega needed a serious upgrade in the romance department. Why have 3 husbands if you're sleeping alone? Leo found William in the practice yard, swinging a massive broadsword that looked like it weighed more than Leo did. William's shirt was damp with sweat, clinging to shoulders that were wider than a doorway. Morning, Big Will, Leo chirped, leaning against a stone pillar and biting into a peach. Nice form. Do you always work out this early, or are you just trying to impress me with the bicep flex? William didn't even blink. He swung the sword, swoosh, cleaving a training dummy in half. He moved past Leo as if he were a ghost, reaching for a towel without a single glance. William's internal strategy, he's different now. Bold. But Omegas are all the same. If I ignore him, he'll realize how much he needs my approval. He'll be on his knees begging for a scrap of my attention by sundown. I'll make him crawl back to being the submissive little doll I married. Leo watched him walk away and snorted. Oh, I see. We're playing hard to get. Low-budget move, Will. I've ignored billionaires more important than you. Your silent treatment is about as scary as a fluffy kitten. William's step faltered for a microsecond, but he kept walking, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like marble. Next on Leo's list was the library. He found Lucas sitting perfectly upright, transcribing ancient scrolls. The room was silent enough to hear a spider sneeze. Leo didn't walk in, he slid across the polished floor in his silk socks. Hey, monk boy, whatcha writing? A list of ways to be a buzzkill. Lucas didn't look up from his brush. Consort. You are wearing indoor slippers in the Hall of Wisdom. Rule 402. Proper footwear is required. 10 minutes of silent meditation in the corner as punishment. 10 minutes. Leo laughed, sitting right on the table, knocking over a stack of papers. How about 10 minutes of you telling me I'm pretty? Or maybe you could show me how that, no touch, rule works in practice. Leo reached out to poke Lucas's nose. Lucas flinched back so fast he nearly fell off his stool, his prayer beads rattling. Do not. Physical contact is for the purpose of procreation and formal ceremony only. Lucas hissed, his face flushing a deep, repressed red. You are a chaos element. Your punishment is doubled. 20 minutes. Make it an hour, baby, Leo winked, leaning in close until he could smell the sandalwood on Lucas's skin. The more you punish me, the more I think you're obsessed with me. Lucas looked like he wanted to vanish into the inkwell. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the palace in shades of gold and violet, Leo felt a pair of gentle hands drape a fur cloak over his shoulders. He didn't have to look. The scent was different, sweet jasmine and warm rain. Julian, they've been mean to you today, haven't they? Julian whispered, standing close enough to provide warmth but far enough to give Leo space, the space the old Leo always needed. Leo turned around, his eyes softening. He reached up and cupped Julian's face. Julian froze, his breath hitching. I'm not scared of you, Julian. Why are you still standing 3 feet away? I'm your husband. I don't want to frighten you, Julian said, his voice trembling with years of suppressed longing. I've loved you since the day you arrived, but you always looked at me like I was a monster. Well, look again, Leo said, grabbing Julian's hand and pulling him toward the bedchambers. I'm not a lamb anymore. And I'm definitely not scared of a man who looks at me like I'm the moon and the stars. Inside the silk-draped room, the atmosphere shifted. For the first time, Julian didn't pull away. When Julian finally leaned in to kiss him, a tentative, hovering question, Leo didn't wait. He wrapped his arms around Julian's neck and pulled him down, deepening the kiss with a hunger that shocked the alpha. Leo. Julian gasped against his lips, his hands finally gripping Leo's waist. You're so bold. I've wasted one life being alone, Leo whispered, his voice husky. I'm not wasting a second of this one. Love me, Julian, properly. It was a night of firsts. For Julian, it was the first time he could truly hold the person he loved without feeling like a predator. For Leo, it was the first time in 2 lifetimes he felt a heartbeat against his own that actually cared if he stayed. Unlike the cold silence of William or the rigid walls of Lucas, Julian was fire and silk. He was patient, his touches worshipful, tracing every inch of Leo's 19-year-old body as if he were discovering a new continent. The next morning, the triple emperors met for breakfast. William sat at the head of the table, looking smug, waiting for a weeping Leo to come begging for his favor. Lucas sat to the left, looking exhausted from a night of cleansing his mind from Leo's flirtations. Then, the doors opened. Leo walked in, glowing, his hair slightly messy, wearing a robe that was definitely Julian's. He was humming a jaunty tune. Julian followed behind him, looking like a man who had just won the lottery and discovered the meaning of life at the same time. Leo sat down, grabbed a steamed bun, and looked at William. Morning, Grumpy. Hope you enjoyed your sword. I had a much better workout. He then turned to Lucas and blew a kiss. And Lucas, your punishment didn't work. I woke up feeling like a total rebel. William's spoon snapped in his hand. Lucas's face hit the table. Leo just grinned, leaning his head on Julian's shoulder. Pass the tea, Julian honey. Being this shameless is thirsty work. The atmosphere at the imperial breakfast table was thick enough to cut with a ceremonial dagger. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and Leo was currently feeding Julian a piece of glazed hawthorn as if they were the only 2 people in the entire Eastern Empire. Is it sweet, honey? Leo cooed, leaning so close to Julian that their shoulders were fused together. Leo was wearing one of Julian's oversized silk outer robes, the hem dragging on the floor, looking utterly rumpled and satisfied. Julian, the once calm and patient third alpha, looked like he had been struck by lightning and blessed by an angel at the same time. His ears were a permanent shade of crimson. It's very sweet, Leo. Like you. Leo giggled, a sound that made William snap his chopsticks in half and Lucas choke on his green tea. William stared at his bowl of plain congee as if it had insulted his ancestors. He was the first alpha. He was the strongest, the eldest, the one who usually took what he wanted. He had spent the last 24 hours waiting for Leo to come crawling to him, sobbing for attention because of his cold shoulder strategy. Instead, Leo hadn't even looked at him. William's thoughts. How did that little brat, the one who used to faint if I cleared my throat, spend the night in Julian's quarters? And why is he wearing Julian's robe? That's imperial silk. It shouldn't look that inviting on him. Julian is the youngest. He's soft. I'm the one who provides the protection. Why isn't he looking at me? William, you're scaring the porridge, Leo remarked, finally glancing at him. If you stare at it any harder, it's going to evaporate. Or is that your jealous face? It's very grumpy. 1/10, would not recommend for a first date. William slammed his hand on the table. I am not jealous. I am disgusted by this lack of decorum. Julian, release him. It is time for the morning briefing. Julian didn't move. He actually tightened his arm around Leo's waist. The briefing can wait, brother. Leo was tired. He needs to eat. William felt a vain throb in his temple. The little lamb had been claimed by the soft one first. It felt like a strategic defeat, and William hated losing. Lucas, meanwhile, was staring at the wall, his prayer beads moving through his fingers at terminal velocity. Every time Leo's laughter rang out, Lucas felt a strange, sharp pang right behind his ribs. Lucas's thoughts, it is the tea. The tea must be too acidic. Or perhaps the incense is low quality. There is no logical reason for my heart to be hammering like a war drum. He is a chaos element. He is a rule breaker. He touched my nose. He is a shameless, flirting, beautiful, annoying omega. Section 12 of the Purity Code says, why can't I remember Section 12? Lucas. Hey, monk boy. Leo called out, waving a sticky hand. You've been staring at that spot on the wall for 10 minutes. Is there a ghost there, or are you just imagining me without this robe? I am. Lucas stood up so fast his chair screeched. I am meditating on the impermanence of the flesh. Your suggestions are lewd. They are a violation of the sanctity of this dining hall. You're also holding your prayer beads upside down, Leo pointed out with a predatory smirk. Lucas looked down, turned bright red, and immediately tucked the beads into his sleeve. I have duties, documents, rules to write. Stay away from me, consort. He practically sprinted out of the room. Leo laughed, leaning back into Julian's chest. He's so fun to tease. It's like poking a very handsome tortoise. Julian leaned down, whispering into Leo's ear, ignoring his brooding older brother at the head of the table. You shouldn't tease them too much, Leo. They don't know how to handle you. In truth, I don't know if I do either. Leo turned in Julian's arms, looping his arms around the alpha's neck. You handled me just fine last night, Jules. Don't sell yourself short. The guards at the door simultaneously looked at the ceiling, trying to pretend they were deaf. Leo, Julian murmured, his voice thick with genuine emotion. I waited 3 years for you to even say my name without shaking. Now that you're like this, I feel like I'm dreaming. I don't want to wake up. Leo's heart did a little flip. In his old life, people only wanted his bank account. Here, Julian wanted him. I'm not going anywhere, big guy. But if we're going to be a family, I need to fix those too. Idiots, he gestured toward the door where Lucas fled and the steaming William. A house with 3 husbands should be full of love, not cold shoulders and rule books. Leo stood up, still draped in Julian's robe, and walked over to William. William stiffened, expecting a plea for forgiveness. Instead, Leo leaned down and planted a bold, messy kiss right on William's cheek, leaving a faint trace of hawthorn syrup behind. There. Now you don't have to be jealous of Julian anymore, Leo said with a wink. Clean yourself up, Will. You look like you're ready to bite someone, and I'd prefer it if that energy was saved for the bedroom. William sat frozen, his hand slowly rising to touch the spot on his cheek. His brain had officially short-circuited. Julian, Leo called out, heading for the gardens. Let's go shopping. I want to buy a dog. And some silk that actually fits me. Julian jumped up, a devoted smile on his face. Anything you want, Leo. Anything at all. As they left, William remained staring at nothing, his heart thumping a rhythm he couldn't control. Shameless, he whispered, though he didn't sound angry anymore. Utterly shameless. The capital city of the great empire was alive with the sound of merchants hawking their wares, the smell of roasted chestnuts, and the sight of the imperial consort, a man who was supposed to be a fragile mute, currently standing on a merchant's table, bidding way too much gold for a fluffy white puppy. Leo was in heaven. For the first time, he was spending money that didn't come from a lonely boardroom meeting. He was surrounded by people, life, and most importantly, Julian. Jules, look at this silk. It's the color of the sea, Leo chirped, draping a bolt of turquoise fabric over Julian's broad shoulders. And this puppy. He has your eyes, kind of soulful and slightly confused. Julian carried 15 bags, 3 boxes of pastries, and now, a squirming puppy. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were glowing. Julian's feelings. I would burn this city down if he asked, but apparently, he just wants to buy every shiny thing in sight. My heart feels so full it might actually burst. He's so loud, so bright. I can't believe he's mine. I don't care about the gold, I just want to hear him laugh forever. Anything you want, Leo, Julian whispered, leaning down to nuzzle Leo's ear in the middle of the crowded street. Careful, Jules, Leo teased, rubbing his nose against Julian's. You'll give the commoners a show. But keep going, I like the attention. 10 paces behind them, leaning against a vegetable stall and wearing a very conspicuous straw hat to hide his face, was William. He was supposed to be at a war council meeting. Instead, he was stalking his own spouse. Every time Leo laughed and leaned into Julian, William's grip on a head of cabbage tightened until the vegetable pulverized in his hand. William's feelings. Why is he touching Julian's arm like that? Why didn't he ask me to go shopping? I have the bigger treasury. I could buy him the whole street. Look at him, he's glowing. He never looked like that when he was with me. He just used to shake. Is it because I'm too cold? Should I buy a dog too? No, that's ridiculous. I am the first alpha. I don't do fluffy. Leo, sensing a pair of eyes on his back, knew exactly who was behind the straw hat. He decided to turn the heat up. Oh, Julian, Leo loudly exclaimed, wrapping his arms around Julian's neck and pulling him into a deep, theatrical kiss right in front of the vegetable stall. You're the only alpha who truly knows how to treat me. Some people are just so cold and boring, don't you think? William's hat practically vibrated with rage. He let out a low growl that made the vegetable merchant flee in terror. While Julian and William were locked in a battle of love and ego, Lucas had been sent by the palace to ensure the consort follows the budgetary rules. He found them near a bookstore. Lucas was clutching his prayer beads, trying to maintain his monk persona while Leo was busy being a chaos element. Consort, stop. Lucas marched up, his face pale. You have exceeded the daily allowance for frivolous joy. And that robe, it is slipping off your shoulder. It is a violation of. Leo didn't let him finish. He spun around, grabbed Lucas's stiff collar, and pulled him down until their lips were inches apart. Lucas, baby, Leo whispered, his voice dripping with honey. You talk so much about rules. Do the rules say anything about me taking you into that changing room and showing you exactly how frivolous I can be? Lucas turned a color of red that shouldn't be biologically possible. Section 9. The sanctity of. Unhand me. Leo didn't let go. Instead, he reached down and boldly squeezed Lucas's hand. You're shaking, Lucas. Is it because you're disgusted, or because you've never had an omega look at you and tell you that beneath those grumpy robes, you're actually incredibly hot? Lucas's feelings. I need to pray. I need to fast for 40 days. Why is his skin so warm? Why does he smell like peaches and trouble? My heart is beating at 200 pulses per minute. This is a medical emergency. This is wonderful. No, it is a sin. But his eyes, they're so pretty. I must go, Lucas stammered, his monk persona crumbling. I have to categorize things. He turned and walked straight into a wooden post. Thump. He's so cute when he's concussed, Leo giggled, turning back to Julian. As they headed back to the palace, Leo walked in the middle, holding Julian's hand tightly, while William trailed behind, still in the hat, and Lucas walked on the other side, staring at his feet and reciting scriptures to keep his mind off Leo's lips. Leo felt a deep sense of satisfaction. In his old life, he was a successful man, but he was a golden ghost. Here, he was a troublemaker, but he was alive. He leaned his head on Julian's shoulder as they entered the palace gates. "Hey, Julian." "Yes, my love. I think tonight, we should invite William and Lucas for dinner. I want to see if William can eat while I sit on your lap, and if Lucas can finish a sentence without mentioning a rule." Julian laughed, kissing the top of Leo's head. "You're going to give them a heart attack, Leo." "Well," Leo said, his eyes flashing with a naughty glint. "At least they'll die happy." The imperial dining hall was usually a place of tomb-like silence, where the only sound was the clinking of porcelain and the soft rustle of silk. Tonight, it sounded like a circus tent. Leo had spent the afternoon rearranging the seating. Instead of 3 separate head chairs for the alphas, he had brought in a long, plush divan. He sat right in the center, draped in a scandalous sheer silk robe that left his collarbones, and a few of Julian's love marks from the previous night, on full display. William sat to Leo's right, his jaw muscles jumping. He had finally ditched the straw hat, but his pride was still wounded. Lucas sat to the left, staring intensely at a bowl of soup as if it contained the secrets of the universe, his prayer beads clicking at triple speed. Julian sat behind Leo, his arms wrapped possessively around Leo's waist, resting his chin on Leo's shoulder. "You look tense, Will," Leo said, picking up a piece of spicy duck with his chopsticks and holding it to William's lips. "Open up. You've been grumpy all day. A little spice might distract you from your bruised ego." William stared at the duck. His internal struggle was legendary. William's inner monologue: "I should refuse. I am the great general. I do not take handouts from a chaotic omega. But, he's looking at me. His eyes are so bright. And if I don't eat it, Julian will. I can't let Julian win again." William leaned forward and snapped the duck from the chopsticks, his lips accidentally brushing Leo's fingers. He froze, a jolt of electricity shooting up his spine. "Good boy," Leo purred, patting William's cheek. William choked. "I am not a dog, Leo." "Could have fooled me," Leo winked. "You've been following me around the market all day like a lost puppy." Leo turned his attention to the monk. Lucas was trying to maintain a 10-inch buffer zone of holy air between him and Leo. "Lucas, you haven't touched your wine," Leo said, leaning over. He intentionally let his robe slide further off his shoulder, exposing the smooth skin of his back. Lucas's eyes darted to the skin, then to the ceiling, then to the floor. Alcohol leads to clouding of the judgment. Section 15, subsection B. "Forget section 15, Leo whispered, reaching out and dragging his foot up Lucas's calf under the table. "Tell me, Lucas, if your judgment is so clouded, why are your hands shaking? Is it the wine? Or is it because you want to know if I'm as soft as I look?" Lucas gasped, his face turning a shade of purple that matched the grapes on the table. "This is an assault. A domestic infraction. Julian, restrain your spouse." Julian just laughed, pulling Leo closer. "I tried that for 3 years, Lucas. It didn't work. I think I prefer him like this, wild and shameless." The test began in earnest when Leo decided he was too tired to hold his own cup. "Julian, honey, I'm parched," Leo sighed, leaning back into Julian's chest. Julian immediately lifted a golden goblet to Leo's lips. Leo drank slowly, his eyes locked onto William. He let a single drop of wine trickle down his chin, trailing toward his throat. William's hand slammed onto the table. "Enough. Julian, you are spoiling him. He is becoming a tyrant." "Oh, and what are you going to do about it, Will?" Leo challenged, his voice low and smoky. "Are you going to punish me? Because Lucas already tried that, and it only made me want more." "I would put you in your place," William growled, his alpha scent, heavy cedar and smoke, filling the room. "Promise," Leo teased, standing up and walking over to William. He climbed onto William's lap, straddling his armored thighs. The entire room of servants gasped and looked away. William's breath hitched. He tried to keep his hands at his sides, but his instincts were screaming. He finally grabbed Leo's waist, his grip firm and possessive. "You are a menace," William whispered, his eyes dark with a mix of fury and intense longing. "And you're a hypocrite," Leo laughed, leaning in to nip at William's ear. You act like you hate my boldness, but your heart is beating so fast I can feel it through your chest. Admit it. You've been jealous of Julian all day. For a moment, the three alphas looked at each other. The tension wasn't just about Leo anymore, it was about the fact that this mute lamb had managed to dismantle all their defenses in 48 hours. William realized he didn't want a submissive doll, he wanted a challenge. He wanted a partner who wasn't afraid to slap his hand away. Lucas realized his rules were just a shield to hide his own fear of intimacy, and Leo was the only one brave enough to kick that shield down. Julian looked at his brothers and felt a pang of protectiveness but also relief. He couldn't keep Leo's light all to himself, Leo was too big for one man to hold. I think, Julian said, standing up and joining them, that the old Leo is gone forever. And honestly, I don't miss him. Leo beamed, looking at his three alphas. One cold and fierce, one rigid and holy, and one warm and devoted. He had gone from a man with millions and no one, to a man with nothing but three powerful husbands who were currently ready to fight the world for him. Good, Leo said, grabbing a wine jug. Because I'm planning on being a troublemaker for the next 80 years. Now, who's going to carry me to bed? My legs are tired from all that shopping. William grabbed him around the waist, Julian took his hand, and even Lucas stepped forward, tentatively touching Leo's shoulder. I will consult the manual on the proper way to carry a consort, Lucas muttered, though he didn't pull his hand away. Screw the manual, Lucas, Leo laughed. Just lift. The golden honeymoon period of the Imperial Palace didn't just crack, it shattered under the weight of 1,000 years of tradition. The triple sovereigns were not just husbands, they were the pillars of an empire. And pillars, as the Grand Council liked to remind them, required a broad base. In the high hall of audience, the air was cold. The elderly ministers, led by the Prime Minister, knelt before the three alphas. The border provinces are restless, the Prime Minister droned. An alliance with the Southern Kingdom is required. Their princess is an omega of high standing. To stabilize the throne, the emperors must take a second consort. William sat on the central throne, his face carved from ice. He didn't think of the warmth of Leo's laughter or the way Leo had slept curled against his chest the night before. He thought of maps. He thought of blood and steel. William's logic: a sovereign's heart is secondary to his crown. Leo is delightful. He has awakened something in me. But I am the first alpha. I must protect the realm. One more person in the palace won't change my feelings for the boy, but it will stop a war. He will understand. He has to. Lucas nodded slowly, his fingers flying over his prayer beads. Lucas's logic. The Imperial Code, Volume 1, Section 8. The Emperor shall maintain a harem of merit to ensure the lineage. It is the natural order. One consort is a fluke, two is a tradition. My chest aches at the thought of Leo's tears, but how can I argue against the law I have spent my life defending? Julian, however, stood up so fast his chair toppled. No, we promised him. We finally earned his trust. If we bring another into this marriage, we are breaking him all over again. Julian, William's voice was a whip crack. Sit down. This is not a domestic dispute. It is statecraft. Leo had been planning a surprise. He was carrying a tray of handmade honey cakes, a recipe from his old world, intended to bribe Lucas into skipping a meditation session. He stopped outside the heavy oak doors, his heart hammering against his ribs as he heard the final verdict. The engagement shall be announced tomorrow. The tray hit the floor. Honey cakes scattered like broken hopes. The doors swung open. The three alphas stepped out to find Leo standing there. He wasn't the mute lamb, and he wasn't the shameless flirt. He looked like a man who had been stabbed and was trying to decide whether to bleed or strike back. Leo, Julian reached out, his face pale. We can explain. Explain what, Julian? Leo's voice was dangerously quiet. Explain that my family has a revolving door. Explain that I'm just a placeholder until a princess with a better dowry comes along. They moved to the private quarters, the atmosphere suffocating. It is an alliance, Leo, William said, crossing his arms, falling back into his cold general persona to hide his own guilt. It changes nothing between us. You are the first consort. Your position is secure. She will live in the West Wing. You won't even have to see her. Secure. Leo let out a harsh, jagged laugh. I didn't crawl out of a lonely grave in another life to be secure in a corner of your palace, William. I came here because I thought I finally found people who saw me, not my utility." He turned to Lucas. "And you, the man of rules, does your code say anything about loyalty? About the sanctity of a bond?" Lucas looked away, his voice trembling. "The code serves the empire, consort. A ruler belongs to the people, not just to one person. It is the way it has always been. Then the way it has always been is garbage." Leo shouted, tears finally spilling over. He looked at Julian, who was weeping silently. "And you, Julian, you're the only one who fought. But you're still standing with them. You're still letting it happen. I have no power over the first Alpha's decree." Julian cried. "Leo, please. I love you more than my own life." Leo wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his expression hardening into the CEO who had once fired a board of directors without blinking. "Listen to me carefully," Leo said, his voice echoing in the stone room. "In my world, we have a word for this. It's called divorce. You want a second marriage. Fine, but you won't have a first one." The three Alphas froze. "If that woman sets foot in this palace as your consort," Leo continued, his gaze pinning William to the spot, "I am leaving. I will strip off these silks, I will leave these jewels, and I will disappear. You can have your alliance. You can have your stable throne. But you will never see me, touch me, or hear my voice again." "You wouldn't," William growled, though his eyes showed a flash of pure terror. "You are an Omega. You have nowhere to go. Try me, Big Will," Leo snapped, stepping into William's space, his finger poking the Alpha's chest. "I built an empire from nothing once. I can do it again. I'd rather be a beggar in the streets who owns his own heart than a first consort who has to share his husband's with a political contract." Leo looked at all three of them, the man he had loved passionately, the man he had teased, and the man he had challenged. "Choose," Leo whispered, his voice breaking. "The princess, or me. Because I am not a piece of furniture you can just add a matching set to. I am Leo. And I am enough, or I am nothing." He turned and walked out, slamming the doors so hard the dust fell from the rafters, leaving the three most powerful men in the world standing in a deafening, terrifying silence. The atmosphere in the Imperial Palace had shifted from a lively, chaotic home to a high-security vault. The air felt thin, charged with the static of a looming storm. In the private war room, William stared at a map, though his eyes weren't seeing the borders. He was tracing the memory of the kiss Leo had pressed to his cheek just days ago. Yet, his stubbornness was a mountain that refused to move. "He will settle," William said, his voice a low rumble. "He is emotional. Omegas are prone to these outbursts when their nest is threatened. He needs to realize that his lifestyle, his safety, and his pup all depend on this throne." Lucas sat nearby, methodically polishing his prayer beads with a silk cloth. "The law is the law, brother. He is an Omega of 19 years with no family and no standing outside of us. Where would he go? To the streets? To the mountains? He is merely testing our resolve." Section 22. A spouse may protest, but the sovereign's decree is final. "Exactly," William grunted. "Guards." The captain of the guard entered, bowing low. "The consort is not to leave the fragrant lotus pavilion," William ordered. "He is permitted anything he desires, jewels, silk, the finest foods, but he is not to step past the garden gates without my written permission. If he tries to leave, bring him back. Gently, but firmly." William's internal delusion: "I am protecting him from himself. Once the wedding is over and he sees the princess is no threat to his bed, he will come back to me. He'll realize I am the wall that keeps the world away. He's just a bratty, beautiful child throwing a tantrum." Julian was leaning against the cold stone wall, his face buried in his hands. He felt like he was watching a slow-motion shipwreck. "You're both fools," Julian whispered, his voice cracking. "You didn't see his eyes. You're looking at him like he's the boy who couldn't speak. But that boy died in the pond. This Leo has the soul of a king, not a consort." "Julian, enough with the sentiment," Lucas snapped. "We are providing for him." "Providing for him," Julian roared, slamming his fist against the table. "He doesn't want your gold, William. He doesn't want your Section 22, Lucas. He wants to be chosen. He told us he would leave, and you respond by turning his home into a prison. Do you really think a cage will make him love you?" Julian turned and ran toward the pavilion, his heart screaming. He knew Leo. He knew the fire that lived behind those doe eyes. He knew that Leo would rather burn the palace down than live as a secondary thought. Inside the pavilion, Leo wasn't crying anymore. He was standing by the window, watching the guards take their positions at the gate. He looked at the lavish silks he was wearing, the turquoise fabric Julian had bought him, the jade hairpin William had given him. He felt a profound sense of déjà vu. In his past life, he was a prisoner of his own success. In this life, he was a prisoner of someone else's power. They really think I'm a toy, Leo muttered, his voice cold and devoid of its usual playful lilt. The doors burst open, and Julian stumbled in, breathless. Leo, listen to me. I tried. I fought them. But William has locked the gates. Please, just stay quiet for a few days. Let the anger pass. I'll find a way to stop the wedding, I promise. Leo turned around. He looked at Julian with a pitying smile that broke Julian's heart. Julian, Leo said softly, you're a good man. You're the only one who actually loves the person inside this body. But you're weak against them. You follow their lead because they're your brothers. I'll fight them. Julian cried, grabbing Leo's hands. I'll take you away myself. No, you won't, Leo said, pulling his hands back. Because you still think this is a home. To me, it's just another boardroom where the partners are trying to screw me over. William thinks I have nowhere to go. He thinks an Omega is a helpless creature. Leo walked over to the vanity and picked up a heavy bronze mirror. He looked at his reflection, the beautiful, 19-year-old face. Tell William and Lucas one thing for me, Julian, Leo said, his voice as sharp as a diamond. A cage only works if the bird is afraid of the sky. I've lived through death once. Did they really think I'm afraid of a few guards and a stone wall? That night, for the first time since the awakening, Leo refused to eat. He refused to see any of them. William stood outside the bedroom door, listening to the silence. He expected sobbing. He expected the sound of things being thrown. But there was nothing. He's sleeping, William told himself, though his hand trembled as he touched the wood of the door. He'll be hungry by morning. He'll come out and tease me for being grumpy again. It's just a matter of time. But in the darkness of the room, Leo wasn't sleeping. He was shredding his expensive silk robes into strips, tying them together into a long, sturdy rope. He was packing a small bag with only the essentials, gold coins he'd swiped from the treasury and a small dagger Julian had given him for protection. He looked at the bed where he had shared such warmth with Julian, and for a second, a single tear escaped. Goodbye, Jules, he whispered. Maybe in the next life, you'll be the only one. Leo climbed onto the balcony railing. The height was dizzying, but to a man who had already lost everything once, the fall was nothing compared to the shame of staying. The moonlight was a cold, indifferent witness as the silk rope Leo had fashioned from his wedding finery brushed against the rough stone of the palace wall. He didn't look back. He didn't look at the flickering lanterns of the high towers where his 3 husbands slept, one dreaming of conquest, one of scripture, and one of a love he was too weak to protect. The sun rose over the imperial city, painting the gold-tiled roofs in a mocking glow. Julian was the first at the door. He hadn't slept. His chest had felt tight all night, a premonition gnawing at his gut. Leo, sweetheart, I brought the jasmine tea you like, Julian called out, his voice thin. No answer. Leo, please. Don't be stubborn. William is already reconsidering the guard's placement. Silence. Julian pushed the door open. The room was perfectly tidy, which was the first sign of disaster. The new Leo was messy. He left fruit peels on the table and robes draped over chairs. But the bed was made. On the pillow sat the turquoise jade hairpin, the heavy gold bangles, and the imperial signet of the consort. No, Julian whispered, his knees hitting the floor. No, no, no. His scream brought William and Lucas running. William burst in, hand on his sword, expecting an assassin. Instead, he found Julian clutching a shredded piece of red silk, the remains of Leo's wedding robe. Where is he? William roared, his eyes scanning the empty room. Guards, search the gardens. He's hiding. He's playing a game. Lucas walked to the balcony. He saw the frayed silk tied to the railing, fluttering in the wind like a white flag of surrender. He picked up a small scrap of paper weighted down by his own prayer beads. It had 4 words written in Leo's bold, modern script: enjoy your new alliance. William's feelings. The first alpha felt as if his heart had been ripped out by a dull blade. He had spent his life winning battles, yet he had lost the only person who made the victory worth coming home to. He stormed through the pavilion, throwing furniture, his roar echoing through the halls. Find him. I want every gate closed. If a single bird flies out of this city, I want its wings clipped. He belongs to me. But deep down, the cold realization settled: Leo didn't belong to anyone. William had tried to own a storm, and the storm had simply moved on. Lucas's feelings. The second alpha stood frozen by the balcony. For the first time in his life, the code failed him. Section 22 didn't mention the hollow ache in his stomach. He remembered Leo's foot touching his calf under the table, the warmth, the life, the shamelessness he had secretly started to crave. I drove him away, Lucas whispered, his prayer beads snapping in his hand, the wooden balls clattering to the floor like hail. I chose a book over a soul. Julian's feelings. Julian was beyond anger. He looked at his brothers with a cold, dead stare. He's gone. And he's never coming back. You treated him like a political pawn, and he reminded you that he is a king. I hope your princess is worth the silence of this house. Miles away, in a dusty corner of the lower capital, a young man sat in a small, run-down tea house. He wore a simple, rough cotton tunic and a straw hat pulled low. His hands were scratched from the climb, and his feet were blistered, but his eyes were electric. Leo took a sip of the cheap, bitter tea and smiled. It tasted better than the finest Imperial vintage. Hey, kid, the tea shop owner barked. You looking for work? You look like a pampered scholar who's fallen on hard times. Leo looked up, the sunlight catching the sharp line of his jaw. I'm looking for a life, old man. And I'm not a scholar. I'm a businessman. A businessman. The man laughed. In these rags. What's your name? Leo paused. He thought of the palace, the 3 alphas, and the mute lamb he was supposed to be. He took a deep breath, feeling the air of freedom fill his lungs for the first time in 2 lives. My name is Leo, he said, his voice firm and resonant. And I don't belong to anyone but myself. Leo walked to the window and watched the imperial carriages racing through the streets, soldiers shouting his name, showing sketches of a mute omega. He watched them pass by, his heart heavy with the memory of Julian's kindness and William's heat, but his resolve was iron. I loved you guys, Leo thought, a single, final tear tracking down his cheek before he wiped it away. But I love myself more. If you want a partner, you find me as an equal. But I will never be your prisoner again. He turned back to the tea shop owner. I have 10 gold coins and a plan to corner the spice market in this district. You want a partner, or should I go to the shop next door? The owner blinked, stunned by the sheer audacity and the terrifyingly sharp intelligence in the boy's eyes. Well, sit down, Leo. Let's talk. In the palace, 3 emperors wept. In the streets, a legend was being born. The imperial palace had become a gilded morgue. The alliance with the southern kingdom had been signed, but the princess sat in a lonely wing, ignored by 3 men who had forgotten how to smile. They had the stability they wanted, and it tasted like ash. Meanwhile, in the bustling heart of the capital's commercial district, the Golden Phoenix Trading House had appeared out of nowhere. Its owner was a mysterious young man who wore a silk mask and spoke with a tongue as sharp as a financier's ledger. Leo sat in his private office, surrounded by abacuses and scrolls. He wasn't the mute lamb, or the imperial consort. He was Director Leo, the man who had cornered the silk and spice market in under 6 months. Director, the shipment from the western docks is in, a handsome young assistant said, leaning a bit too close to Leo's shoulder. And the tea merchants are begging for an audience. They say you're the most brilliant, and beautiful, businessman in the empire. Leo laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated freedom. Tell them flattery doesn't lower my interest rates. But they can leave the samples. He felt whole. He had used the gold he'd taken to flip small properties, then moved into commodities. He was 19 with the brain of a 38-year-old shark. He didn't need a crown to be a king. For months, the 3 alphas had been living in a hell of their own making. William had stopped leading his armies. He spent his nights staring at the empty side of his bed, his scent turned bitter and sharp with grief. Lucas had burned his law books. He realized that a law that drove away the person you loved was a law of the dead. Julian was a shadow. He had moved out of the main palace and refused to speak to his brothers, blaming them for the silence in his heart. Then, a report reached the palace. A merchant in the North District looks exactly like the missing consort, but he is bold, wealthy, and surrounded by alpha suitors. The three emperors didn't wait for a carriage. They rode through the city like a whirlwind, their imperial capes flying, terror and hope battling in their chests. Leo was standing in front of his shop, negotiating with a group of wealthy merchants. He was dressed in a sleek, modern adaptation of a hanfu, short-sleeved, practical, and incredibly stylish. He was laughing, tossing a gold coin in the air, looking more radiant than he ever had in the palace. "I told you, Lord Chen," Leo said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "My price is final. If you want the best jasmine, you pay the best price. I don't give discounts for old friends." Leo. The voice was like a thunderclap. The crowd parted as three tall, imposing figures in imperial black and gold stepped forward. Leo didn't flinch. He didn't shake. He slowly turned, tucked the gold coin into his belt, and looked at his three husbands with the boredom of a man looking at a late delivery. "Oh," Leo said, his voice flat. "The triple sovereigns. To what do I owe this honor? Are you here to buy spices, or are you just lost?" William stepped forward, his eyes bloodshot. "Leo, we've searched every inch of this world for you. Come home. Now. I'll burn the alliance papers. I'll execute the council. Just come back." Leo tilted his head. "Home. My home is right here. I own this building. I own the warehouse. And I own myself. Why would I want to go back to a cage?" Lucas fell to one knee in the middle of the dusty street, his pride shattered. "Leo, the code. I was wrong. Section 1 of the heart says there is only you. I haven't slept. I haven't prayed. I only see your face. That's a medical condition, Lucas. You should see a doctor," Leo replied coldly. Julian walked up, his eyes overflowing with tears. He didn't try to grab Leo, he just stood there, trembling. "Leo, I don't care about the throne. I'll leave with you. I'll be your servant. Just don't look at me with such cold eyes. It's killing me." Leo's heart twinged at Julian's voice, but he hardened himself. He looked at the three of them, the men who thought they could own him. "You guys don't get it," Leo said, stepping closer to them, his presence so commanding that even William flinched. "You think you can just say, 'Sorry,' and I'll put the collar back on. I am a successful man. I am wealthy. I am free. I have alphas lining up to take me to dinner who actually ask for my opinion." He leaned into William's space, mirroring the way he used to tease him, but without the affection. "If you want me, you don't command me. You don't allow me. You court me. And right now, your competition is looking a lot more promising than you three. Court you," William whispered, his soul catching fire. "You mean, we have to win you back?" From scratch, Leo smirked, popping a grape into his mouth. "And I'm a very expensive date. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. Guards, show these gentlemen the way out. They're blocking the entrance for paying customers." The three most powerful men in the empire stood in the dirt, watched by a mocking crowd, as their mute lamb walked back into his empire without looking back. The hunt was over. The wooing had begun. The North District of the capital had seen many things, riots, festivals, and black markets, but it had never seen three emperors standing in line at a commoner's noodle stall, holding bouquets of wild peonies and looking like they were about to face an executioner. Leo watched them from his second-story balcony, sipping a cup of high-grade oolong. He leaned his chin on his hand, a devilish smirk playing on his lips. "Su, look at that. The first alpha is currently being yelled at by a grandmother for blocking the walkway." Su, who had escaped the palace to find Leo weeks ago, giggled. "Master, William looks like he wants to declare war on that noodle pot." "Let him," Leo laughed. "He needs to learn that his crown doesn't buy him a fast pass to my heart." William had traded his golden armor for a simple black tunic, though he still looked like he could kill a man with a glare. He marched up to the doors of the Golden Phoenix Trading House, his chest puffed out. "I am here to see the director," William barked at the clerk. "Tell him his husband is waiting." The clerk, a teenager Leo had trained personally, didn't even look up from his ledger. "The director is in a meeting with the Textile Guild. You'll have to take a number, husband. You're currently number 42. There's a bench outside. It's a bit damp, but it builds character. William's face turned purple. William's feelings. I have led armies of 10,000. I have conquered the southern reach. And I am being told to sit on a damp bench by a boy who hasn't even grown a beard. My soul is screaming. But, if I leave, Julian will take my spot. I have to stay. I have to show him I can endure for him. He sat on the damp bench for 4 hours. Lucas had decided on a different approach. He had spent the night rewriting the Imperial Code of Devotion. He approached Leo later that afternoon while Leo was inspecting a shipment of raw silk. Leo, Lucas said, his voice solemn. He held out a scroll tied with a silver ribbon. I have drafted a new contract. Section 1. All alliance marriages are nullified. Section 2. I shall grant you 50% of the imperial treasury as a gesture of. Leo didn't even take the scroll. He just kept feeling the texture of the silk. Lucas, honey, you're trying to buy me again. I already have money. I want to know if you can actually be a human being without a piece of paper telling you how to act. I am a human being, Lucas stammered. Prove it, Leo said, pointing to a pile of messy, tangled silk threads in the corner. The workers are behind schedule. Sit there and untangle those. By hand. No magic, no servants, no rules. Just patience. Lucas's feelings. My fingers are meant for prayer beads and ink brushes. These threads are a chaotic nightmare. But as I sit here, watching Leo work, his brow furrowed in concentration, I realize I've spent my life organizing the world into boxes, while Leo is the thread that holds everything together. I will untangle every knot in this city if it means he smiles at me again. Julian didn't bring gold or scrolls. He brought a small, clumsy-looking wooden box. When he finally got his turn to see Leo, he looked exhausted but hopeful. I made this, Julian said, opening the box. Inside was a hand-carved dog, a replica of the puppy Leo had bought in the market. It was a bit lopsided, and Julian's fingers were covered in small bandages from the carving knife. I know I can't compete with your business mind, Leo. But I wanted to give you something that wasn't bought with the Empire's blood. Something from my own hands. Leo's heart, which had been a fortress of ice for months, felt a tiny crack. He looked at the bandaged fingers of the prince who had never performed manual labor in his life. It's a bit ugly, Jules, Leo whispered, his voice softening. I know, Julian smiled sadly. But it loves you very much. Just like me. That evening, Leo stepped out onto the street. The 3 alphas were still there. William was soaking wet from a sudden rainstorm, Lucas had silk threads stuck to his robes, and Julian was holding his lopsided wooden dog. They looked pathetic. They looked ridiculous. They looked like they actually cared. All right, boys, Leo said, crossing his arms. I'm hungry. There's a tavern down the street that serves the cheapest ale and the greasiest dumplings in the city. No VIP tables. No guards. If you want to eat with me, you're paying with the coins you earned today by helping the merchants. William looked at his empty pockets. Lucas looked at the dirt on his hands. I helped a merchant unload crates of cabbage for 3 copper coins, William said, his voice thick with a strange kind of pride. I sold my untangled silk for 5 coppers, Lucas added. I have 2, Julian said. I gave the rest to a beggar. Leo felt a genuine, shameless laugh bubble up in his throat. He walked over and grabbed William's rough hand, Julian's bandaged one, and even pulled the blushing Lucas closer. 10 copper coins for a dinner with the wealthiest man in the North District. You guys are terrible at business, Leo winked. But you're getting better at being husbands. As they walked toward the tavern, the triple emperors, following a commoner, into a smoky, loud room, Leo realized something. He didn't just want a family. He wanted a family that was willing to fall apart and rebuild itself for him. By the way, Will, Leo whispered as they sat at a sticky wooden table. I saw you yell at that grandma. You're still on probation. William sighed, leaning his head against Leo's shoulder in the middle of the crowded room. I'll apologize to her tomorrow. Just, don't leave again. We'll see, Leo smirked, reaching for a dumpling. The night is young, and I haven't even told you about my plan to tax the Southern Alliance yet. The alphas groaned in unison, but for the first time in months, they felt at home. The fragile piece of Leo's new, middle class, life was shattered by the sound of silver trumpets. The Southern Alliance had arrived. Princess Serafina, draped in gold and followed by a caravan of 100 soldiers, rolled into the capital expecting to be greeted by 3 emperors in a golden palace. Instead, she found the city buzzing with rumors that the great sovereigns were currently living in a 2-bedroom apartment above a spice shop, competing over who got to wash the director's laundry. Princess Serafina stormed into the Golden Phoenix trading house, her nose wrinkled at the smell of cinnamon and raw silk. She found William moving heavy crates, Lucas filing tax returns, and Julian sweeping the floor. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, pointing a jeweled finger at the emperors. "I am here for a wedding, not a labor camp. Why are the rulers of the East acting like servants to this commoner?" Leo stepped out from behind a silk curtain, wearing a robe that cost more than the princess's entire carriage. He was fanning himself lazily, looking utterly bored. "He's not a commoner," William growled, dropping a crate of peppercorns that shook the floor. "He's the director. And he's our husband. You're just the paperwork." "Paperwork." The princess turned red. "The treaty is signed. If there is no marriage, there is war." Leo walked down the stairs, his heels clicking sharply on the wood. He didn't look scared, he looked like he was about to close a merger. "Princess, honey," Leo said, leaning against a pillar. "Let's talk numbers. You don't actually want to marry these 3. William has a temper, Lucas is a walking encyclopedia of boring rules, and Julian, well, Julian is great, but he's already taken." "I want the throne," Serafina snapped. "No, you want the power and the wealth," Leo corrected, his eyes flashing. "The Southern Kingdom is broke. Your father sent you here to save his treasury, not his heart. So, here's my counter-offer." Leo pulled out a scroll, a trade agreement he had drafted that morning. The Leo Treaty, greater than trade. The Golden Phoenix Trading House will grant the Southern Kingdom exclusive rights to export Eastern spices. Gold. A direct investment into the southern ports, bypassing the imperial treasury entirely. The catch, the marriage is cancelled. Serafina returns home as the merchant queen of the South, wealthier and more powerful than any consort could ever be. You'd give me your own trade routes," Serafina whispered, looking at the staggering numbers. "I have plenty," Leo shrugged shamelessly. "I'd rather lose a bit of profit than share my bed." "Business is business, princess. What's it going to be? A cold marriage to 3 men who will ignore you, or a kingdom of your own gold?" Serafina looked at the emperors, who were all looking at Leo with worshipful, terrifying intensity, and then at the gold. "I'll take the gold." Once the princess had scurried away with her new trade deal, the shop went silent. William, Lucas, and Julian stood among the crates, looking at Leo. "You bought off a war," William said, a slow, proud smirk spreading across his face. "You used your own wealth to save our throne." "I didn't do it for your throne, Leo said, walking over and grabbing William's collar, pulling him down for a rough, possessive kiss. "I did it for my peace of mind. I don't share." He turned to Lucas, who was staring at the Leo Treaty with professional awe. "And you? Are you going to cite Section 4 about unauthorized diplomacy?" Lucas dropped the scroll and pulled Leo into his arms, a rare, bold move for the monk-like alpha. "The only section I care about is the one that says you are the most brilliant creature in existence." I am deeply in love with a madman." Julian wrapped his arms around both of them, burying his face in Leo's neck. "Can we go home now? Real home. The palace feels like a house when you're there." Leo looked at his 3 alphas. They were dirty, tired, and completely humbled. They had learned that power wasn't in a crown, but in the person you were willing to sacrifice that crown for. "Fine," Leo sighed, though he was smiling. "We go back to the palace. But under my rules. I keep my business. I keep my voice. And if I hear the word alliance, or second consort, ever again, I'm taking the cat and moving to the coast." "We don't have a cat," Julian pointed out. "We're getting a cat," Leo declared. As the 4 of them walked out of the shop and toward the waiting imperial carriage, the citizens watched in awe. The mute lamb had returned, but he was leading the lions by their manes. Leo leaned out of the carriage window as they drove away, blowing a kiss to his shop. He had come into this world with nothing, died in the last one alone, but now he had an empire, 3 devoted husbands, and a future he had written himself. "Hey, Will. Leo whispered as the carriage curtains closed. Yes, Leo. Move over. I want to sit on your lap. It's been a long day of being the boss. William laughed, a real, booming sound, and pulled his shameless Omega home. The end.